Introduction. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused, guilty, or like you're somehow always the one to blame? Or been in a relationship that felt like the most perfect connection you'd ever had, only to watch it sour into a daily source of anxiety and self-doubt? If that sounds familiar, you've probably met a master manipulator. These people don't play by the normal rules. They have a hidden script, a psychological playbook designed to give them power by stripping you of yours. For years, this playbook has been their secret weapon. It's a collection of dark persuasion tactics that create emotional dependency, warp your sense of reality, and keep you right where they want you. But today, we're pulling back the curtain. We're going to explore the contents of this metaphorical seduction audiobook, the body of knowledge that represents everything a manipulator fears. Now, this isn't about learning their tactics to use on others. It's about dissecting them so you can build an unbreakable defense. Every chapter in this book exposes a core tactic, and by understanding it, you neutralize it. This is their kryptonite. Exposure is the one thing they can't stand, because it destroys the secrecy of their methods, takes away their psychological leverage, and empowers you to resist. So let's crack open the first chapter and reveal the secrets they hoped you'd never learn. Chapter 1. The Anatomy of Seduction Manipulation. The most dangerous trap is not the one that holds your body. It's the one that convinces your heart it walked in by choice. Seduction does not begin with touch. It begins with attention, and the person who controls your attention can quietly shape your world. If you have ever felt a sudden warmth around someone, a feeling of being seen like sunlight falling through a window, you already know the doorway. Seduction manipulation begins where your loneliness and your hope meet. It listens before it speaks. It watches before it moves. It is not always cruel, not always loud, not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like patience and understanding. Sometimes it looks like rescue. The seduction manipulator studies the small tremors of your inner life, the stories you tell about love, the fears you carry from old wounds, the way your voice changes when you talk about what you want, and they make a map. This map is not used to travel toward you. It is used to travel around you, to reach the levers that tilt your choices without ever appearing to push. To understand their psychology, imagine someone who has learned that closeness is a currency and certainty is a performance. Deep down, they may not trust that love will stay if it is free. So they build a system where love must pay rent. They prize control because control feels like safety. They prize your admiration because admiration feels like air. Their charm is not an accident. It is a crafted instrument tuned to your frequency. If you cherish kindness, they become soft. If you cherish ambition, they become extraordinary. If you cherish mystery, they become fog and moonlight. They do not create these selves from nothing. They mirror back your light until you forget you have your own. This is not always malicious in their mind. Often it is survival, an old decision hardened into habit. If I can be what you need, then I cannot be left. But habit does not excuse harm. A mask worn long enough stops being a costume and becomes a lie. The invisible chains of emotional control are woven from very ordinary threads. There is the thread of pace, moving a connection faster than your trust can keep up, so that your fear of losing the moment quiets your doubts. There is the thread of scarcity, suggesting that what you feel together is rare, nearly impossible to find, so that any boundary risks destroying something precious. There is the thread of selective warmth, lavish attention followed by cool distance, creating a climate inside you where you chase the weather rather than check the forecast. There is the thread of confession, sharing vulnerable stories that invite your sympathy, while also creating a ledger in which you owe them patience beyond your limits. None of these threads alone can hold you. Together, they braid into a rope you may call destiny. You don't see the knots. You feel the pull. Power, ego, and fear are the fuel that keep this engine running. Power is the sense of being the sun around which another life orbits. Ego is the story that says, I must be special if I can command such gravity. Fear is the background hum, fear of insignificance, of abandonment, of facing the quiet where no one is clapping. The manipulator's ego is not simply arrogance, it is a shield against emptiness. Their power is not simply dominance, it is medicine taken in doses that get larger over time. And fear is not simply cowardice, it is a child who learned that the only safe place was in control. In this way you can look at the manipulator without worship or hatred. You can look at them the way a physician looks at an illness, clearly with knowledge, unwilling to romanticize it or to pretend it is harmless. What makes awareness their greatest enemy is simple. Awareness breaks the illusion of necessity. The spell of seduction insists that you need them to feel complete, to feel chosen, to feel safe, to feel like your life is finally moving toward its meaning. Awareness puts those needs back where they belong, inside you. You still want connection, but you stop treating it as oxygen. You still appreciate attention, but you stop allowing it to rent space in your self-worth. Awareness slows the pace so your values can catch up. It asks gentle questions that sound almost too small to matter. Do I like who I am around this person? Do I make more promises to them than they make to me? When I say no, what happens next? Manipulation hates those questions because they turn the stage lights around. The performance falters when the audience begins to see the wires. It helps to notice what your body knows before your mind does. That shallow breath when a message doesn't arrive on time. That rush of relief when it finally does. That impulse to explain yourself, even when no one has asked you to. That creeping confusion after a conversation that seemed loving but left you doubting your memory. Your nervous system is not a poet. It is a watchdog. It barks at patterns. When you feel the bark, don't scold it. Bring it a bowl of clarity. Write down what was promised and what was delivered. Track how many times your boundaries were met versus bent. Name the tactics without drama: love bombing, future faking, guilt tripping, strategic silence, as if you are labeling cabinet drawers, because once labeled, they can't hide. This is not cynicism, it is care. You might wonder whether calling these patterns manipulation is too harsh. Perhaps you've seen the good in them. The laughter, the tenderness, the moments that felt like home. Both can be true. A manipulator can be generous and calculated, attentive and self-serving, wounded and dangerous. Complexity does not cancel responsibility. If the net effect is that you become smaller to keep the peace, if your choices narrow until you live inside their moods, then whatever else is present, manipulation is present. And so the question is not, are they all bad? The question is, am I free? Freedom is not the absence of love. It is the presence of choice. If your yes cost you your voice, it was not a choice. It was a trade. There is a quiet strength in refusing the bargain. You do not need a dramatic speech or a final burst of courage. You need a steady return to yourself, practiced in small moments. You pause when rushed. You ask for specifics when flattered. You say, "I'll get back to you," when pressure appears dressed as romance. You observe whether apologies come with change or simply with charm. You let silence be silence. You don't fill it with justifications you were never asked for. And you learn to tolerate disappointment, their disappointment, your own disappointment, that the fantasy is smaller in daylight than it was at night. The ability to feel disappointment without abandoning yourself is a sovereign skill. It closes every door that once opened into a cage. The manipulator's greatest fear is not your anger. It is your steadiness. Anger can be redirected, repackaged as passion, provoked into apology. Steadiness is different. It does not punish. It chooses. It does not threaten, it leaves. It does not argue with the story. It writes a new one. In the presence of your steadiness, the tactics that once worked begin to look obvious, even clumsy. The temperature swings no longer dictate your wardrobe. The scarcity pitch no longer empties your wallet of attention. The fog clears, and you find that the path forward is not a maze. It is a straight line you were always allowed to take. As we move deeper into this audiobook, keep one promise to yourself. You will not use this knowledge to become colder. You will use it to become clearer. Clarity does not chase. Clarity does not beg. Clarity does not perform worthiness. It listens for reciprocity, for consistency, for kindness that is not a transaction. And when it finds those things, it relaxes. Your life is allowed to be ordinary in the best way. Quiet mornings, honest conversations, love that does not require you to be hungry to taste it. Before we close, look gently at your own story. Where have you mistaken intensity for intimacy? Where have you accepted confusion as proof that something profound is happening? Where have you called anxiety chemistry, exhaustion devotion, unpredictability passion? If you find these places, do not judge yourself. Smile at the part of you that wanted magic and didn't know you were the magician. The anatomy of seduction manipulation is not a mystery anymore. You have names for the bones and the tendons, for the breath and the posture. You can see how it moves. And once you see how it moves, you can step aside. When this chapter ends, let it be the beginning of a different kind of attention, the kind you direct inward first. Notice who you become when no one is watching. Notice how your voice sounds when it isn't trying to keep a door from closing. Notice the relief that arrives when you choose truth over theater. Then carry that noticing into the next conversation, the next promise, the next invitation to hurry. If your peace asks for space, give it. If your values ask for time, grant it. If your heart asks for proof, wait for it. The people meant for you will not be intimidated by your clarity. They will be grateful for it. And the ones who only wanted your hunger will fade, where hunger is not for sale. Chapter 2. The forbidden nature of seduction. The things that move us most deeply are the things we're warned not to touch. Desire becomes more magnetic when it is fenced off. Knowledge grows more urgent when someone tells you it is dangerous. Seduction lives at this crossroads, where curiosity meets taboo, where the ache to know meets the rule that says you shouldn't. Seduction has always been a double-edged blade. And the reason is simple. We are social creatures built to respond to signals, stories, and promises. Those signals can invite love or command obedience, can soothe loneliness or harvest it. In one moment, seduction is a gentle bridge, a way to meet another soul without the armor and noise of daily life. In the next, it is a lever quietly prying your choices away from you. As a weapon, seduction shapes your perception until the path you would have chosen becomes the path you think you chose. As a defense, seduction protects the softest parts of you by giving them language and mystery, by letting you say, "Come closer," without risking everything all at once. The same glance that welcomes can also warn. The same story that enchants can also shield. What makes seduction forbidden is not that it is always dark. It is that it is always powerful, and power makes people nervous, especially those who prefer you easy to move. There was a time when seduction wore its art openly. It was poetry, music, dance, the deliberate slowness of attention, the ritual of dressing not just the body but the moment itself. People learned the grammar of charm the way they learned the seasons, by living inside them long enough to notice their turns. But as our world accelerated, as markets learned to package feelings and sell them back to us, seduction changed clothes. It traded opera for algorithms, ritual for repetition, and the private art of attunement for public metrics of influence. What once required presence began to be simulated by patterns, like praise, delay, repeat. What once asked for patience began to be replaced by pressure, decide now, reply now, feel now. In that shift, what was art became something closer to psychological warfare, not because people became worse, but because the tools became sharper and cheaper and sharp. Cheap tools invite careless hands. Warfare is a heavy word, but think about the terrain. Attention is the battlefield. Identity is the supply line. Fear and hope are the weather. If I can crowd your attention, I don't need to persuade you. I only need to exhaust your ability to choose. If I can name you smart, special, chosen, misunderstood, and then link that identity to my approval, I don't need to coerce you. You will work to remain the person I said you were. If I can stir fear and offer myself as relief, or stir hope and offer myself as the shortcut, I don't need to force you. The storm will drive you to my harbor. None of this looks like violence in the old sense. It looks like a timeline, a text thread, a series of small compromises that seem harmless until the map of your life starts to resemble someone else's plan. The forbidden quality isn't in the moves themselves, it's in the honesty they resist. Seduction, when misused, hides the cost of what it asks for under the velvet of what it offers. Society calls this knowledge dangerous, and in a way it is. When you see how influence works, you can't unsee it. You will catch the catch in a compliment, the negotiation hidden inside an apology, the sale inside a sermon, the performance inside a promise. Part of you will grieve the loss of effortless wonder, and that grief is human. But there is another reason society calls it taboo. Institutions run more smoothly when people do not notice the strings. Families, companies, governments, brands, many are healthier when their members are awake, but many are easier when their members are asleep. You will be told not to be cynical, and you shouldn't be. You will be warned not to overthink, and that warning can be wise. But sometimes don't. Overthink it is a mask for don't think it. All. Sometimes trust the process is code for don't ask what the process costs you. The taboo of knowing too much protects not your heart, but the systems that prefer your obedience. Real wisdom doesn't banish wonder. It teaches you how to keep it without being used by it. Manipulators want you naive for practical reasons. Naivety shortens the distance between a suggestion and your agreement. It turns speed into a virtue and pressure into romance. It makes discomfort feel like a test you have to pass, instead of a message you should listen to. When you are naive, you outsource your instincts to someone else's confidence. When you are aware, you don't stop trusting. You learn to calibrate your trust. Awareness slows the movie down. It gives you the frame by frame of that intoxicating smile, that perfectly timed silence, that promise that arrives exactly when your hope is the hungriest. With the film slowed, the spell loses its jump cuts. You watch your own face in the reflection and ask, what is being exchanged here? Manipulators hate that question because it asks for receipts, and receipts are hard to fake when both parties are present. It is tempting to think the answer is to withdraw from seduction altogether, to step out of the current and live on the shore. But life without allure is not safety, it is starvation. We need beauty the way plants need light. We need the thrill of being chosen, the glow of giving our attention, the playful dance of presentation and revelation that makes intimacy sweet. The point is not to exile seduction. It is to return it to honesty. When seduction is art, it invites and it accepts refusal. When it is warfare, it corners and it punishes hesitation. You can tell the difference by how your body feels after the moment passes. Art leaves you more yourself. Warfare leaves you more confused. Art lets you breathe. Warfare manages your oxygen. So how did the art drift into war for so many? Partly because technology made scale easy, and anything scaled without care becomes extractive. Partly because speed made patience feel like failure, and anything rushed becomes manipulative by accident. Partly because loneliness grew louder, and where there is hunger there will be sellers. The antidote is not retreat, it is craftsmanship. Treat your attention like a craft. Treat your yes like a signature. Treat your desire like a musician treats silence, as part of the music, not a gap to be filled at any cost. When you do, seduction can come home. It will still shimmer. It will still sway the air. But it will not demand you misplace yourself to be moved by it. The forbidden nature of seduction, then, is not a warning to keep you small. It is an invitation to grow large enough to hold both truths at once, That influence is real and can harm, and that influence is real and can heal. The hand that guides can also grip. The song that entrances can also free. The awareness you carry into these encounters does not remove the sweetness. It removes the debt. You can enjoy the candlelight knowing where the exit is. You can revel in the praise while knowing exactly what you will and will not trade for it. You can answer the knock at your door without giving your guest the deed to the house. As you listen now, notice what stirs in you when you hear the word forbidden. Does it make you lean in or lean back? Do you fear losing your innocence, or do you fear discovering you gave it away long ago to people who did not deserve it? There is no shame in either answer. Curiosity can be a compass, and caution can be a friend. Let both walk with you. The knowledge in this audiobook is not a secret to hoard. It is a light to carry. Hold it low where it illuminates the ground at your feet. Watch how the path changes when you see the edges, and when you meet someone who tries to convince you that light ruins the magic, smile and keep the lamp anyway. Magic that cannot survive light is a trick. The kind that can is love. When this chapter ends, consider a simple experiment. Think of one place in your life where the pace feels just a little too fast, where the praise feels just a little too precise, where your yes comes just a little too quickly after discomfort. Slow that moment by a breath or two. Ask what is being exchanged and whether the price is named. If it is clear and kind, proceed with joy. If it is fog and hurry, step aside and let it pass. The forbidden becomes less frightening when you are willing to look at it. And you may find, to your quiet relief, that the power you were warned not to touch was never meant to be someone else's. It was meant to be yours, held gently, used wisely, and shared with care. Chapter 3. The Masks They Wear. People rarely tell you who they are. They show you who they think you need. The most convincing lies are not spoken. They are performed, and the performance is tailored to your longing. You have met the charming facade before. It doesn't begin with a grand gesture. It begins with timing. They arrive when you are most open, when a recent hurt has left your boundaries thin, when a new hope has made you brave, when a change in your life has loosened the knots that kept you steady. Their attention lands like rain after a long season of drought, and you drink before you ask where the clouds came from. This is how a manipulator disguises intent, not by hiding their face but by reflecting yours. They become fluent in your highlights, your favorite stories, your secret insecurities, the version of yourself you are trying to grow into, and they cast themselves opposite that character as the perfect supporting role. If you want to be seen as strong, they admire your strength. If you want to be cherished as sensitive, they cradle your softness. If you want to be rescued from a tired routine, they are a storm. The facade is not simply charm. It is compatibility engineered in fast forward, intimacy rehearsed before trust exists, closeness without the costs that real closeness requires. False empathy is the most persuasive fabric in this costume. Real empathy carries weight. It listens longer than it speaks, remembers what you forgot you said, adjusts quietly to the facts of your life. False empathy is lighter and sweeter and quicker. It repeats your words back to you with a shine on them. It says, "I get it," and then pivots so the spotlight returns to their experience, their lesson, their wound. Emotional camouflage works by matching your mood just enough to pass inspection. The way a chameleon matches leaves in a breeze. You feel mirrored, even understood, and for a while that is enough. But if you listen carefully, you notice that their caring has a script. Comfort arrives on cue. Apologies land without change. Tears appear as the argument threatens to end. They say what a caring person would say, but they do not do what a caring person would do when the lights are off and the audience is gone. That is the difference. Real empathy shifts behavior. False empathy shifts scenes. The lover persona is the easiest to adore and the hardest to leave. They move with a practiced ease that makes romance look simple and fate feel obvious. Their texts read like fragments of a poem. Their eye contact is steady but soft, Never invasive, always attentive. They remember your coffee order, the story about your father, the exact date you said you started to doubt yourself. They speak at the edge of a whisper, and you find yourself leaning in so your body collaborates with the closeness. The lover persona is not about lust. It is about myth. They create a narrative in which your meeting was unlikely, your bond is rare, and your future is already stitched. The manipulation is gentle. They borrow all the symbols of devotion, consistency, confession, care, and use them as stage props. You know this persona by what happens when you need something they did not plan to give. Ask for a slower pace and the poetry sours. Ask for accountability and the music cuts. A real lover becomes more themselves when boundaries appear. A performer becomes more distant, then returns with a louder chorus when they fear losing the crowd. The savior persona is subtler because it hides inside your relief. They show up when you're overwhelmed, overworked, or quietly drowning, and they put their hands exactly where the structure of your life is cracking. They fix things, practical things, forms, deadlines, arguments, plans. They say, "Let me," and you exhale. In that exhale, your gratitude unspools into trust. The savior understands the economics of exhaustion. When you are tired, generosity feels like love and efficiency feels like virtue. But there is a contract hidden in their kindness. The favor becomes a tether. The help becomes a tally. The solution becomes a story about how you would fall apart without them. Soon decisions travel through their gate by default. Soon your self-respect starts outsourcing itself to their approval. The savior persona thrives on being needed more than being known. You will recognize it the day you attempt to carry your own weight again, and they grow moody, distant, or quietly punitive, as if your competence were an insult instead of a relief. The victim persona can be difficult to spot because it wears pain, and pain asks for our gentlest instincts. This mask presents as someone chronically wronged, unlucky in love, misunderstood by friends, betrayed by colleagues. Their stories are rich with villains and sparse with responsibility. At first, your care rises naturally. You want to be the exception, the safe harbor, the one who finally treats them right. But notice how conflict plays out when you are the one asking for repair. The victim's sorrow flips into accusation with startling speed. They cry before accountability can find a chair. They apologize for feeling too much, rather than for doing too little. The outcome is always the same. You hold their pain while yours goes unheld. This persona recruits empathy to avoid growth and uses fragility to control the pace of truth. If you feel guilty for wanting fairness, you're likely standing in their story instead of your own. How do you see beyond the performance and detect real motives? Slow the scene. Performances rely on momentum, on you filling in the gaps with hope. When the tempo drops, the seams show. Pay attention to pattern over promise. Anyone can deliver beauty in the first act. Observe what happens in the third. When you express a need, does their care expand or does the room get smaller? When you say no, do they get curious or strategic? When they apologize, what changes in the week that follows? One honest test is to ask for specifics, times, plans, definitions, boundaries. The mask likes ambiguity because ambiguity is easy to sculpt. Precision has weight. It leaves fingerprints. If they resist the weight of clarity, you are not meeting resistance to control. You are meeting resistance to truth. Another way to read a mask is to read your body around it. Your nervous system conducts a background audit in every room you enter. Do you breathe deeper or shallower when they arrive? Do you rush to reply? Do you rehearse your words as if your sentences are auditions? Do you feel oddly tired after time together, as if your attention has been harvested? None of these feelings are proof on their own. Together, they sketch a picture you should respect. The body knows when it is being performed at. It tenses where choice is scarce. It blinks when glitter blows in its eyes. It helps to remember that not every mask is malicious. Many people learn to present the best angle of themselves to survive the worst angles of life. We all curate, We all have a public voice and a private voice. The difference with manipulation is that the mask is used to gain access and then to keep power. The aim isn't connection, it's control. You don't need to punish that difference. You only need to prefer your freedom. When you make that preference steady and visible, the right people will remove their costumes because they were wearing them for protection, not deception. The wrong people will insist the costume is their skin. Believe them and step back. You may wonder whether seeing masks everywhere will make you lonely. It might for a while, because clarity lowers the volume on fireworks and raises it on a quieter kind of warmth. But what arrives in that quiet is worth the transition. Presence that doesn't audition for your approval. Kindness that doesn't invoice you. Affection that doesn't vanish when you ask it to move at the speed of truth. The lover, the savior, and the victim exist in all of us as archetypes we slip into under stress. What you are learning is to spot when the archetype has become a cage. You are learning to open the door without burning down the house. As this chapter closes, think gently about your own masks, the ones you wear when you're afraid love won't recognize you without makeup, when you're worried help won't arrive unless you look helpless, when you're sure respect won't come unless you perform perfection. Thank those masks for their service and retire them where you can. The people who are meant to sit close in your life will know the difference between costume and character, and will choose the character every time. And when a charming facade steps onto your stage again, when a savior reaches for your steering wheel, when a victim script tries to cast you as the rescuer, touch the part of you that now sees. Ask for specifics. Slow the pace. Name what you feel, not to accuse, but to align. If the mask is all there is, it will fall apart in the light. If there is a person under it, they will be grateful for the air. Chapter 4. The Psychology of Vulnerability. The places where you are hurt are not proof that you are weak. They are proof that you are human. What makes them dangerous is not the pain itself, but the story that says you must hide it to be loved. If you have ever wondered why certain people seem to find the exact words that soften you, the precise tone that disarms you, the perfectly timed confession that makes you lower your guard, it is because vulnerability has a pattern, and manipulators study patterns the way navigators study stars. They do not need to know your whole history. They only need to recognize the contours of a wound, a flinch when someone raises their voice, a long pause before you say what you want, an eagerness to please that outruns your comfort. These are small signals, but together they sketch a map. To a person hungry for control, this map is not a warning. It is an invitation. They aim not at your strength, but at your ache, because strength argues and ache agrees. Strength debates terms. Ache negotiates with hope. And hope, when desperate, signs contracts it would never sign in daylight. Vulnerability is not just where we break. It is also where we bond. This is what makes it precious and perilous at the same time. We connect through the doors we dare to open, through the truths we whisper when we think we might be safe. A healthy person treats those doors with reverence. A manipulator treats them like leverage. They create what I'll call psychic resonance, a deliberate matching of your pain with their performance. If abandonment shaped you, they speak in vows of permanence. If criticism carved you, they become your most devoted fan. If chaos raised you, they move with a reassuring calm. The match feels miraculous at first, a rare, exquisite fit. But resonance alone is not love. It is a mirror placed at the right angle. The intent behind the mirror matters. When the intent is care, the resonance invites healing. When the intent is control, the resonance invites dependency. You can tell the difference by the direction of the attention. Does the conversation drift back to their needs once you open up? Or do they remain with you, curious without rushing, supportive without claiming heroism? Control cannot sit quietly beside your pain. It must make your pain useful. Why do manipulators target wounds rather than wishes? Because wounds are quicker. Wishes have boundaries and plans. Wounds have reflexes. If your reflex is to avoid conflict at any cost, a guilt-tinged sigh can move your day. If your reflex is to earn love through service, a small frown can keep you busy for hours. If your reflex is to fix what breaks, a carefully staged crisis can become a leash you hold yourself. This is not an indictment of tenderness. It is a description of gravity. What we have not healed pulls us. What we have not named confuses us. And what confuses us can be steered by anyone who is confident enough to speak, while we are still trying to find our breath. The good news is that wounds are not only points of entry, they can become points of strength. Turning weaknesses into armor does not mean becoming hard, suspicious, or unreachable. It means building handles on your truths so you can carry them without dropping yourself. If you fear abandonment, your armor is not to abandon first. Your armor is to learn the early sensations of panic in your chest and to say out loud, "I need reassurance, and I also need time before I decide." If you fear criticism, your armor is not perfectionism. Your armor is to separate feedback about actions from verdicts about worth. If you fear conflict, your armor is not silence. Your armor is a handful of steady sentences you can trust when adrenaline makes you forget your language. "I hear you. I'm not ready to answer. I'll come back to this tomorrow." Armor like this is soft from the outside, firm from the inside. It is not a wall. It is a frame. Psychic resonance can be reclaimed too. You can learn to match your own pain with your own presence before anyone else does. That is the beginning of emotional autonomy. When a memory rises and threatens to steer the moment, you pause and meet it like an old friend who sometimes overstays their welcome. You breathe and you ask simple questions that put the wheel back in your hands. What am I wanting right now? Relief, validation, safety, clarity. Can this person truly offer it? Or am I hoping they will become who I needed years ago? If I give them this decision, do I feel larger or smaller afterward? Awareness does not make the ache disappear, but it turns the ache into information instead of instructions. And once your pain is information, other people's strategies become obvious. The music is still beautiful, but you can see the conductor. It helps to practice small acts of sovereignty when the stakes are low, so you have muscle memory when the stakes are high. Say no to a minor request and watch what happens inside you. Delay a reply by an hour and study the storm that rises in your body. Ask for specifics when someone praises you in glowing, vague terms. The point is not to catch people doing harm. The point is to teach your nervous system that you can survive the sensations that once made you abandon yourself. Manipulators count on those sensations scaring you into speed. Autonomy is the willingness to slow down when speed would be easier. Autonomy is the decision to let someone be disappointed without making it your job to repair their sky. If you want a simple litmus test for the difference between healing and handling, use this. Does the relationship give you more access to yourself or less? When you share a sore place, do you feel more able to choose or more compelled to comply? Do you come away clearer or foggier, steadier or more scrambled? Love will sometimes hurt, but it will not harvest your hesitation as fuel. Care will sometimes be clumsy, but it will not turn your transparency into a script. What honors you will expand your options. What uses you will narrow them. None of this requires you to become suspicious of kindness. Kindness is not the enemy of wisdom. In fact, the more accurately you read your own vulnerabilities, the kinder you can be, to yourself and to others, because you no longer need to police every gesture for hidden danger. You know what you will and will not trade. You know how to ask for what keeps you whole. You can soften without dissolving. And that softness, under your own authority, becomes the most trustworthy signal you send. It tells the world that you value your heart enough to guard it and to share it, and that you will not confuse the two. If you are listening with the sting of a recent bruise, you might feel anger at how easily your openness was turned against you. That anger is allowed. Let it teach you where the door needs a stronger hinge. Let it teach you the difference between a promise and a pattern. Let it teach you the skill of closing the conversation before you close your self-respect. But do not let anger convince you that vulnerability is the problem. Manipulation is not proof that you should stop feeling. It is proof that you should start choosing from feeling rather than for it. There is a world of difference between I feel lonely, so I will cling to the first hand that reaches out, and I feel lonely, so I will choose a connection that honors me, even when my loneliness tries to bargain. Reclaiming your emotional autonomy is less dramatic than it sounds. It is the daily decision to live from the inside out. It is the small, consistent acts of telling yourself the truth before anyone else does. It is giving your needs a name before you give someone your time. It is noticing when your childhood is reaching for the microphone and gently taking it back. And it is trusting that the right people will not punish you for this stance. They will relax into it because it makes love easier, not harder. Clear people are easier to love. They require fewer guesses and fewer games. As we close this chapter, take a breath and scan your life for one place where you always move faster than your peace. Maybe it is the late-night message you can't resist. Maybe it is the apology you offer before you have even checked if you did anything wrong. Maybe it is the advice you give to feel useful when what you really need is to be held. Choose one of these places and slow it by a single breath the next time it appears. Not to test someone else, but to prove to your own body that you belong to you. That is how weakness becomes armor, not by hardening but by aligning. Your wounds are not doors anyone gets to walk through for free. They are part of the house you are learning to protect and to welcome in equal measure. And when you live like that, manipulators lose their favorite tool, your fear of your own depth. You will still feel. You will still care, but you will not hand over the steering wheel every time the road reminds you of a place you once crashed. Chapter 5. Seduction as a Mirror. The person who moves you most deeply is rarely a stranger. They are a reflection of the parts of you still asking for permission to exist. Seduction doesn't invent your longing. It holds up a mirror, and what you rush toward in that reflection reveals where you can be led. It is disarming to realize that your desires, beautiful, human, necessary, can also be doorways. You want to be chosen, and the one who chooses you first can become the one you choose back without question. You want to be understood, and the one who echoes your thoughts can become the one you stop interrogating. You want to be safe, and the one who offers shelter can become the one you hand the keys to. None of this makes you foolish. It makes you alive. Desire is not the enemy. The danger appears when you forget that what attracts you also teaches others how to approach you, and that patterns of attraction, especially the ones you don't name, can be turned into handles someone else can grip. If you look closely at the faces that pull you, you'll find familiar archetypes behind the details. There is the lover who makes devotion feel effortless, whose presence wraps your nervous system in warm light, who speaks in the language of attunement and touch. There is the mentor, who sees your potential as if it were already living in you, whose praise arranges your future, and whose certainty becomes a staircase you climb 2 steps at a time. There is the rebel who embodies the freedom you keep postponing, who breaks rules with grace and invites you to taste your own wildness without the guilt you've been fed since childhood. There is the caregiver, whose steadiness calms the storms inside you, who anticipates needs you haven't voiced and makes you feel cradled in a world that often feels sharp. There is the king or queen who orders chaos with a glance, who radiates competence so strongly that standing beside them feels like inheriting a crown. There is the mystery who speaks softly and leaves space, who invites you to project your best story onto their quiet surface. You may respond to one of these more than the others, or you may find yourself spiraling through them depending on the season of your life. What matters is that each archetype is a mirror for a specific hunger. The lover reflects your need for closeness. The mentor reflects your need for growth. The rebel reflects your need for agency. The caregiver reflects your need for safety. The monarch reflects your need for order and status. The mystery reflects your need for wonder. Seduction becomes manipulation when someone learns which mirror makes your eyes bright, and then positions it to redirect your steps. Attention is the currency that starts the exchange. You already know how powerfully it works because you feel it in your own body. A message lights your phone and your chest lifts. A delay drops your stomach. A compliment lands and your mind leans forward, hoping for more. None of this is shameful. Attention is how humans signal importance. But notice the chain that often follows if you're not awake. Attention grants validation, validation grants access, and access, when scarce or precisely timed, can tilt into submission. You begin by enjoying how they notice you, and if the noticing comes in floods and droughts, you may accidentally start organizing your behavior around keeping the flood. You adjust your tone, your schedule, your opinions, not because they ask directly, but because your body has learned that certain versions of you bring the warmth back faster. What was attraction becomes strategy, and you may not even realize that you've started negotiating with yourself to maintain a supply of attention you didn't realize you were addicted to. Validation is tender. It says you're real, you matter, you're not invisible. Everyone needs it. The question is whether you use validation as nourishment or anesthesia. Nourishment strengthens you to act according to your values. Anesthesia numbs you enough to ignore the cost of chasing the next dose. If you grew up starved for reassurance, intensity can feel like love and pressure can feel like passion. The seducer who understands this doesn't need to persuade you with arguments. They can shape you with rhythms. Fast intimacy, gentle withdrawal, precise praise, strategic distance, a reunion that feels like rain after a drought. The pattern teaches your nervous system to wait for their weather report before you decide how to feel. That is the quiet slide from attention to submission. You forget that you own an inner forecast. Attraction itself is not a trick. It's information. It points toward unfinished business as often as it points toward a healthy match. What you want in someone else can reveal what you're still learning to give yourself. If you're transfixed by the lover's tenderness, ask where your self-talk could be softer. If the mentor's belief electrifies you, ask where you've been ignoring your own efforts. If the rebel thrills you, ask where you've been obedient to rules that no longer fit your life. If the caregiver lowers your shoulders, ask how you might build daily rituals that provide the same steadiness without needing a rescuer. If the monarch's competence seduces you, ask where you can set small orders in your own domain. If the mystery hypnotizes you, ask how you can keep wonder alive without mistaking secrecy for depth. In this way, attraction becomes a teacher rather than a leash. You take the message without surrendering the messenger your crown. Consider how quickly your boundaries change in the presence of your favorite archetype. You may accept lateness from the rebel because you read it as passion. You may accept criticism from the mentor because you read it as guidance. You may accept dependency from the lover because you read it as closeness. You may accept control from the monarch because you read it as protection. You may accept vagueness from the mystery because you read it as depth. You may accept self-neglect with the caregiver because you read your exhaustion as generosity. These relabelings are how leverage works. The behavior stays the same. Only the meaning shifts, and meaning is what your choices obey. The moment you restore the original labels, late is late, criticism without care is aggression. Control dressed as protection is still control. The leverage loosens. You haven't become colder. You've become accurate. There is a generous way to use this mirror that doesn't turn you into a skeptic of your own heart. Start by honoring the truth inside the pull. Tell yourself plainly what the archetype awakens in you. I want to be touched with gentleness. I want to be seen as capable. I want to feel free. I want to rest. I want a structure I can trust. I want to live in wonder. Then ask for those needs directly, in your own life, in small, repeatable ways, so you are not starving when someone offers a feast. A well-fed heart is not easily bought. It can appreciate beauty without bargaining away its boundaries. It can enjoy closeness without confusing it for ownership. It can let attention land like sunlight rather than electricity. When your needs are not secrets to you, they are harder to exploit. You will still be attracted. You should be. Attraction is one of the joys of being human. But let it be a beginning instead of a verdict. Slow the narrative you are tempted to write after the first perfect conversation. Watch what happens, not in the first flood of attention, but in the quiet gaps between. Notice whether their interest makes you more yourself or more manageable. Ask one clarifying question when you want to assume. Offer one boundary when you want to impress. Choose one delay when everything in you wants to sprint. None of these moves fight attraction. They anchor it to truth so it can become love. If love is what you're both actually building, the deepest shift is to see seduction as a mirror with two sides. One side shows you what you expect from others. The other shows you what you expect from yourself. If you use both, you won't swing between naivete and bitterness. You'll live in the steadier middle where curiosity meets care. You'll learn to thank the pull for the information and then see if reality agrees. You'll stop making people carry the weight of your unhealed stories. And you'll stop letting people rent space in your soul with the currency of your oldest hunger. When this chapter ends, try a simple exercise. Think of the person, past or present, who held the strongest pull on you. Name the archetype they embodied in your mind. Name the need that archetype reflected. Then bring that need home. Give it one honest action this week that doesn't require anyone else's permission. A call you've avoided, a boundary you've delayed, a practice you've postponed because you were waiting to be chosen first. Watch how your attraction changes when your own life begins to supply what you thought could only arrive from the outside. If the pull softens, it wasn't love. It was leverage. If the pull remains and grows kinder, you may have found something worth keeping. Either way, the mirror has done its job. It showed you yourself, and in that clear sight, the hands that once could lead you without your consent begin to slip. You will still feel, you will still want, but your wanting will belong to you, and that is the beginning of freedom. Chapter 6. The Mind Games of Power. Power doesn't always arrive as force. Sometimes it arrives as confusion that looks like you. The most effective control is the kind you mistake for your own choice. If you've ever sat in silence after an argument and wondered how the facts turned to fog, you've met gaslighting, the quiet art of replacing your memory with a more convenient version. It rarely announces itself. It begins with a tilted eyebrow, a soft laugh, a gentle, "That's not what happened," as if your recollection is a lovable quirk. The goal isn't to make you believe a whole new world at once. It's to make you doubt your footing. When doubt becomes a habit, you start looking outside yourself for balance. The gaslighter presents their story as steadier than your senses, their certainty as safer than your questions. In time, you start bringing your full mind to the table. You bring a softened version that will be easier to rearrange. This is how the illusion of control is built, not by taking your voice, but by training you to hand it over for clarity. Mirroring often arrives as a gift before it becomes a tool. Someone listens so closely that your words seem to return to you improved, polished, nearly luminous. They love what you love, hate what you hate, dream in your dialect. You feel seen. Being seen is not a trick. It's a human need, but mirroring becomes manipulation when it freezes into a mask, when the reflection only appears to secure your trust and then steer your choices. You begin to fall in love with yourself across the table, and who wouldn't say yes to that? The problem isn't the resonance. It's the purpose. If the reflection expands your freedom, it's intimacy. If it edits your freedom while promising devotion, it's choreography. In that choreography, the illusion of control deepens. You think the dance is mutual because the steps fit your feet, not realizing the music is being cued by someone who profits from where you land. Then comes the cycle that teaches your nervous system to obey. the rhythm of reward and withdrawal. It starts with a flood. Attention, praise, presence, warmth. Messages that arrive before you reach for your phone. Plans that make the week feel bright. The flood is so generous you don't notice the banks being built. And then, without explanation, the tide recedes. Response is slow. Affection cools. Your place in their world slips from sunlight to shadow. You feel it in your chest first. A small panic that quickens the pulse of everything you do. You reach for reasons, and where reasons lack, the mind invents them. Maybe you were too much. Maybe you weren't enough. Maybe you can earn the warmth back by being easier, kinder, quieter, more impressive, less demanding. When the flood returns, because it will, the relief is physical, a sweetness in the bones. Your body begins to chase that sweetness, not the person. The person becomes the dispenser. This is how emotional addiction is grown, not with constant pleasure, but with calibrated uncertainty. The brain bonds to the relief of the reunion and forgets to measure the cost of the drought. In this loop, small gestures take on enormous meaning. A delayed message becomes a verdict. A heart emoji becomes absolution. You start reading tea leaves instead of terms. Your days are scored not by your values, but by the weather in their eyes. You say yes to things that make you smaller, because no feels like risking the next tide. Somewhere along the way you mistake vigilance for devotion. You call anxiety chemistry and adrenaline passion. You are not foolish. You are entrained. Your system is learning exactly what it has been taught, that relief lives outside you and must be secured by pleasing the one who controls the spigot. The emotional economy changes as the loop tightens. Apologies begin to sound like promises, even when no promise is named. Promises begin to sound like proof, even when no proof arrives. Proof begins to sound like patience, even when patience only extends the cycle. Meanwhile, gaslighting maintains the set. When you name the pattern, the script replies, "You're overthinking," or "You're too sensitive," or "Look at everything I do for you." Your reality is put on trial in a courtroom where the judge is also the defendant. If you protest, mirroring returns to soothe. No one understands you like I do. The contradiction is exhausting, and exhaustion makes quick decisions look wise. You choose the simpler pain, the one you already know, over the work of rebuilding a life where your feelings are not negotiated every morning. The antidote to this loop is not rage, though rage can help you stand. The antidote is awareness, practiced until it becomes reflex. Awareness slows what manipulation speeds up. It takes the flood and drought pattern out of myth and names it as a schedule. It writes down what happened instead of what was promised, so your memory has backup when the fog rolls in. It treats attention like weather, pleasant when warm, survivable when cold, and refuses to worship the forecast. Awareness does not argue with gaslighting. It documents. It does not cling to the mirror. It asks for behavior that matches the reflection. It does not chase withdrawal. It stabilizes itself, so the next flood is a bonus, not a rescue. Breaking the loop begins with a small radical shift. You stop solving for their reactions and start solving for your peace. The first move is to give your nervous system long, steady food. Sleep, friends who do not make you perform, work that keeps your hands and mind honest. Hungry people make quick bargains. Fed people raid the contract. The second move is to make space between stimulus and response, where your values can breathe. Delay your yes when your chest is tight. Speak one boundary even if your voice trembles. Ask one clarifying question when you are offered a feeling without a plan. These are not grand gestures. They are quiet rebellions. They interrupt the lesson the loop is trying to teach, that speed equals safety and that confusion equals love. You will be told you're cold. You will be told you're ungrateful. You will be told no one else will give you what you have here. Perhaps that last sentence is true. That is the point. What you have here is not love. It is access sold as destiny. Love can be intense, but it is not a magician's trick. It shows the mechanism. It is willing to be precise. It welcomes your no without punishing your hunger for respect. It survives delay, and it doesn't require you to mistrust your own eyes to keep the story alive. Expect withdrawal to spike when you interrupt the dance. Expect the flood to return with interest. Expect apologies shaped like bouquets and explanations braided from half-truths. This is not proof that you were wrong. It is proof that the schedule has noticed its clock is being reset. Hold your awareness steady. Look for repetition, not rhetoric. If change appears, it will be boring. New habits practiced over time, not poetry at midnight. If change does not appear, your steadiness will become a mirror your partner cannot endure. The loop hates rooms where truth echoes. It will leave or it will turn honest, and either path is a kind of rescue. If you are listening with the ache of recognition, do not turn that ache into a weapon against yourself. You were not naive for wanting tenderness. You were not weak for wanting to be chosen. You were human in a system that taught your body to trade autonomy for relief. Forgive the version of you that called anxiety spark. Thank them for trying to keep the light on with whatever fuel they had. Then give your life a different kind of fuel. Small consistencies, simple rituals, ordinary friendships that do not demand theater. You will be surprised how quickly the mind games lose their shine in a life that doesn't feed on spectacle. As this chapter closes, try one experiment. Think of the person or pattern that pulls you the strongest. For 1 week, do not measure anything by attention. Measure it by clarity. When confusion rises, slow your reply by 1 hour. When the flood arrives, enjoy it without rearranging your day to prove you deserve it. When withdrawal stings, name the feeling out loud to yourself and do one nourishing thing that has nothing to do with them. Walk, call a friend, cook, pray, write what happened, not what you fear. Watch what changes when you stop pinning your weather to someone else's sky. You will still feel. You will still love. But your love will no longer require you to disappear to keep the music playing. And that is how power returns to its rightful place. Not in conquering another, but in choosing yourself without making war. Chapter 7. The Forbidden Tactics They Fear You'll Learn. The easiest way to control a person is to make them believe they're choosing freely. The moment you see the rails under the road, the drive stops feeling like destiny and starts looking like design. What people call covert persuasion is less magic than timing and framing. It begins by arranging your attention, not your beliefs. The first move is to decide what you will notice and what you will ignore. If I can get you to look where the light is warm, you'll miss the hand moving in the shadows. In conversation, this sounds like gentle framing. A question that already carries its answer. A compliment that nudges you toward a role. A small story that makes one path feel natural and another feel rude. None of this shouts, it hums. The hum says, "You're already this kind of person, aren't you?" And your mind, eager to be consistent, nods along. Covert persuasion prefers the narrow door that you don't see because you were guided to enjoy the wallpaper. Once inside, you feel at home without remembering who gave you the key. Emotional pacing is the metronome behind the scenes. Every nervous system dances to rhythm. Quicken it and people race. Slow it and they soften. Stagger it and they cling. The skilled manipulator learns your tempo and then takes the role of conductor. When they want agreement, they line up comfort, humor, and a small yes before the ask. When they want urgency, they dim your sense of time. This window is closing, and this is rare, and we may never feel this again. When they want dependence, they oscillate between intimacy and absence, so your body bonds to relief more than to truth. This is subliminal influence at its most ordinary. Not commands, but cues. Not orders, but atmospheres. You start translating the weather into wisdom. If the room feels warm, the idea must be good. If the text arrives at the exact second your hope gets loud, the connection must be fate. The trick is simple and ancient. Steer the rhythm and the meaning will follow. Some of the most elegant control wears the mask of generosity. The illusion of choice offers you 2 or 3 options that lead to the same destination, then praises you for deciding. Do you want to talk now or after dinner? Sounds kind. The real question was whether you wanted to talk at all. Would you like the intense weekend or the slow week? Sounds considerate. The real commitment was made when the trip was assumed. In negotiations, the illusion of choice shows up as a menu that leaves the price untouched, a concession that costs nothing, a framing that defines the terms so thoroughly that you forget to ask if the terms serve you. In relationships, it can look like permission to express yourself as long as the expression lives inside their schedule, their vocabulary, their mood. You feel free because you can choose the color of the cage. None of this works on a mind that refuses to outsource its pace, and that is why knowledge reverses power. When you recognize framing, you add your own. When you recognize a metronome, you choose your tempo. When you recognize a menu, you ask for the kitchen. Awareness is not a mood. It is a method. It slows the movie and shows you the edits. It tells you where your yes is coming from. Desire, fear, habit, relief, and it refuses to confuse those sources. The moment you can name the pattern out loud, even softly to yourself, the ritual loses its priesthood. That was a double bind. That was urgency without facts. That was affection used to guide a decision. The sentence doesn't have to be clever. It only has to be true. Truth is abrasive to manipulation. It dulls the grip. To see covert persuasion clearly, watch for the little bridges that carry you from feeling to conclusion. The bridge might be a story about a couple who just knew, arriving right after you ask for more time. It might be a sudden emphasis on how rare this moment is, appearing the instant you reach for a boundary. It might be a thread of flattery that awakens your favorite self-image, right before you are offered a role to play. None of these are crimes. They are instruments. Instruments can play hymns or they can play propaganda. The melody is revealed by what happens to your freedom when the song ends. If you feel smaller, rushed, obligated, or indebted, the music was written to move you, not to meet you. Emotional pacing becomes harmless, even beautiful, when it is named and shared. Healthy influence says, "This is exciting. It makes me want to go faster. I also want to make decisions that respect us tomorrow." Manipulation says, "If you really felt this, you wouldn't hesitate." Healthy influence welcomes your pause. It knows truth survives a breath. Manipulation treats the pause as disloyalty and calls your steadiness cold. One way to protect yourself is to practice micro-pauses that no one else can take from you. One deep breath before you answer. One lap around the block before you commit. One night of sleep when your chest is loud. These are small acts of sovereignty, hardly visible from the outside, but inside they rewire who gets to be the conductor. The illusion of choice dissolves when you add the missing option. Neither. This tiny word rescues your agency. Would you like A or B? Neither. Here's what I'm considering. At first it will feel rude, especially if you were raised to equate harmony with goodness, but notice what happens in your body when you say it. The air returns. The room regains 3 dimensions. You remember that life is not a hallway with only 2 doors. In negotiations, adding neither sounds like, "Let's step back and confirm whether this solves my actual problem." In romance, it sounds like, "I'm not ready to define this yet, and I won't be pressured for a timeline." In friendship, it sounds like, "I care about you, and I won't make this choice under a countdown." The power reversal is quiet. It's not a victory pose. It's a chair you sit in while the smoke clears. If you have been caught in these tactics before, you might feel tempted to become suspicious of everyone. Don't. Suspicion will keep you alone, but not necessarily safe. What keeps you safe is accuracy. Accuracy notices the cue without inventing a crime. It watches for patterns and weighs them against values. It asks for specifics when praise feels like a warm fog. It writes down the plan when the moment is loud and rereads it when the moment is quiet. It keeps a small promise to yourself every day, so your worth does not hang on the next dose of attention. The more accurate you become, the less dramatic you need to be. You won't need to expose anyone. You'll simply fail to comply with what doesn't honor you. There's a secret manipulators would rather you never discover. Most of their influence is rented from your unexamined hopes. Once you know what you are hungry for, you can feed it without bargaining away your voice. If admiration moves you most, build a life that includes earned pride. If belonging moves you most, choose communities where presence counts more than performance. If wonder moves you most, make rituals that keep mystery alive without confusing secrecy for depth. When your needs are nourished at home, the traveling carnival looks like what it is. Bright lights, short thrills, expensive tickets, and a lot of cleanup afterward. So let's turn the light gently but firmly. When a frame is offered, add your own frame. When a rhythm is imposed, add your own tempo. When a menu appears, add your own dish. When a choice is narrowed, add your own door. None of this requires confrontation. It requires presence, the kind of presence that returns you to yourself before you return any message. You do not have to win a debate. You only have to refuse to abandon the part of you that wants a life aligned with truth. As this chapter ends, consider one place where you often accept the frame you are given. Maybe it's in the way you define a good partner, a loyal friend, a team player, a spiritual person, a bold creator. Ask who wrote those lines. Ask who benefits when you obey them without question. Then softly, write a line or two of your own. Keep it small. Keep it real. Post it where your eyes will find it before anyone else's voice does. Watch how the next offer sounds different when your inner script is visible. You will still feel the pull of charm, the warmth of praise, the thrill of urgency. But beneath them you will hear a steadier music. It is the sound of choice returning to its rightful owner. Chapter 8. Emotional Alchemy, Turning Darkness into Strength. What breaks you can also build you, if you are willing to hold it in your hands long enough to learn its shape. The same heat that warps metal is the heat that forges a blade. The difference is whether you're being burned or building something that lasts. Emotional alchemy begins with a simple, stubborn decision. I will not waste my pain. If you have been manipulated, you already own a map, where your attention was captured, where your boundaries bent, where your craving for certainty grew louder than your respect for truth. Most people throw that map away because it feels embarrassing to keep it. Don't spread it on the table. Trace the roads with a steady finger. Notice how praise moved you faster than facts. Notice where silence made you explain yourself into exhaustion. Notice how urgency shaved minutes off your thinking and turned desire into obedience. These are not just wounds. They are coordinates. They tell you exactly where your life wants to be fortified. Transformation doesn't start by declaring you'll never be fooled again. It starts by listening to the part of you that was fooled and treating it as a teacher instead of a criminal. Every trigger contains a wish. If flattery dissolves your judgment, the wish is to be seen without begging for visibility. If distance makes you chase, the wish is to trust connection that doesn't require a performance. If criticism crushes you, the wish is to separate who you are from what you did. When you name the wish, you can feed it honestly. That's how triggers get reprogrammed, not by willpower alone, but by giving your nervous system a better source than the old supplier. You stop bargaining with the circus when your home has light. Begin where your body tells the truth earliest. Feel the throb in your chest when a message arrives right on the edge of your loneliness. Call it out to yourself before you answer. Notice the heat in your face when someone rushes intimacy. Let that heat be a signal to breathe, not a cue to prove you're brave. Hear the small tremor in your voice when you're about to say yes, while your stomach is quietly shaking its head. The moment you can feel these signals without judging them, you gain a second between stimulus and response, And that second is the crucible where alchemy happens. In that second you can ask, what would I choose if I wasn't afraid of being left? What would I choose if I didn't need to win this moment? Choice returns when fear stops writing the script. Reprogramming triggers is less dramatic than the self-help slogans promise. It is repetition. It is small, boring loyalty to yourself. Delay your answer by 10 minutes when your chest is tight. Write down what was promised and what was delivered, so memory has a backbone when the fog rolls in. Replace the reflex to explain with the sentence you trust when adrenaline steals your grammar. I need time. When praise arrives like a warm wave, enjoy it, then ask for specifics. What exactly worked for you? The request for detail turns mist into matter. When guilt is used to speed you up, thank it for its concern and move at the pace of your values anyway. These tiny moves teach your nervous system that you can survive discomfort without outsourcing your decisions to the nearest confident voice. The trigger will still fire, it just won't aim the gun. To turn manipulation into mastery, you must also learn the language of influence without letting it hollow you. Influence is not wicked. It is the grammar of human connection. You already speak it when you lower your tone to soothe a child, when you slow your words to calm a friend, when you use a story instead of a lecture to reach the heart that data cannot touch. The skill is not to abandon influence but to anchor it. Ask yourself every time you reach for a persuasive tool, am I inviting or cornering? Am I clarifying or compressing? Am I seeking a shared truth or a quick win? The same mirroring that once seduced you becomes a form of care when you mirror to understand, not to steer. The same pacing that once pressured you becomes kindness when you slow things down to protect the other person's long-term peace, not to harvest their short-term yes. The same framing that once reduced your options becomes generosity when you broaden someone's view rather than editing it to fit your agenda. You can be compelling and clean at the same time. That is the ethical edge, to wield knowledge with a hand that refuses shortcuts that cost someone else their self-respect, or cost you your own. Every tactic you've learned in the dark has a bright twin. Urgency becomes enthusiasm when you let people say no without punishment. Scarcity becomes specialness when you name the limits honestly and never hide the price. Confession becomes closeness when it asks for nothing in return except presence. Silence becomes respect when it holds space rather than manufacturing anxiety. Your aim is not purity. Your aim is alignment, where the tool you use supports the future you want to live in. You will feel the difference in your body. Manipulative moves create a small sour aftertaste. Clean influence leaves calm behind. There is also power in letting your story be seen exactly where it once felt shameful. You don't have to announce your scars to the world. You can simply stop hiding them from yourself. When you stop pretending you were always wise, you become impossible to blackmail by your own past, and paradoxically your presence grows. People relax around someone who is no longer acting a part. They can feel the ground under your feet. Your no smooths out, your yes deepens. Your boundaries stop sounding like punishments and start sounding like facts. This is how I stay kind. This is how I stay clear. This is how I stay me. As you learn the language of influence, you will be tempted to test your new fluency by winning small games. Don't. Measure mastery not by how many people you can move, but by how few manipulative moments you need to tolerate. Mastery looks like walking away earlier, asking for the plan sooner, letting silence sit, declining the invitation to hurry. Mastery looks like telling the truth without theatrics and without apology. I want this. I don't want this. I need more time. I'm not available for pressure. These sentences are not weapons. They are instruments that tune the room. The right people will adjust their pitch. The wrong people will insist you're off-key. Believe the music. Ethics are not the enemy of power. They are the frame that keeps your power from collapsing under its own weight. The moment you start using what you know to bend someone's reality so yours feels bigger, you've begun to empty yourself. It won't happen all at once. You will feel clever at first, maybe even justified, but corrosion is slow and faithful. It steals the exact thing you thought you were protecting, your sense that you are worth following. Keep the edge sharp by naming your why before you reach for any tool. If your why is fear, fear of losing, fear of being alone, fear of being ordinary, step back. If your why is love, love of truth, love of the person in front of you, love of the future you're both trying to build, proceed, and keep the lights on while you do. You might worry that living this way will make you less passionate, less magnetic, less fun. The opposite is true. Clarity makes you luminous because it stops leaking energy into 1,000 little evasions. People can feel that. They lean toward what is steady because their own lives are already too loud. Your steadiness is not sterility. It is warmth with a spine. It is the kind of presence that tells others, you can keep your agency here. I don't need to borrow it to feel big. Before we close, return to one moment that still stings. A conversation where you were spun. A day when you ignored yourself to keep a story alive. An hour when you felt small and called it love. Bring that memory into the light without flinching. Ask it 3 questions. What did I want? What did I fear? What did I trade? Write the answers somewhere private. Then write one small counter-move you can make next time. One breath, one question, one boundary, one delay. This is how darkness becomes strength, not through grand vows, but through practiced substitutions. Truth for speed, presence for panic, compassion for theater. When this chapter ends, I hope you don't feel harder. I hope you feel heavier in the best way, weighted with your own attention, anchored by the knowledge that you can be moved by beauty without being managed by it. Keep your empathy. It is not a liability. It is the gold you were always meant to carry. Just make sure the container is strong. Make sure the hand that holds it is yours. And when the old winds rise, as they always do, lift your lamp, read your map, and keep walking. The path is not free of shadows. It doesn't need to be. You know what to do with the dark now. Chapter 9. The Awakening of the Untouchable Mind. Real power is not the ability to move other people. It is the refusal to be moved against your will. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who can feel everything and still choose. The awakening of an untouchable mind begins not with armor, but with attention. Before awareness grows teeth, it grows eyes. You start to notice the small places where your day is borrowed. How your mood rises and falls on the schedule of someone else's texts. How your confidence swells when praised and thins when ignored. How your decisions speed up when the room heats with urgency. None of these patterns make you weak. They make you human. But humanity becomes leverage when it is unconscious. So the first move is gentle and radical. You aim your attention inward before you aim it anywhere else. You ask quietly, what is happening to me right now? That question is the opening of the door. Self-awareness as defense is different from suspicion. Suspicion scans the world for threats and stays tense, even when no danger arrives. Awareness scans you for signals, and when nothing alarming is found, it lets you rest. That rest is not laziness. It is sovereignty conserving energy for meaningful choices. In the awake mind, sensations are information, not instructions. A quick heart is a message, not a law. A beautiful pull is a possibility, not a destiny. Something changes when you can feel your nervous system light up and remain seated at the table of your values. The manipulator's tools still work on biology, urgency, flattery, scarcity, silence, but they stop working on your choices because choice is now made in a deeper room. Immunity is not numbness. A numb person is easy to steer. They are always chasing sensation. Immunity is a mindset built out of 3 quiet habits: slow perception, plain language, and steady boundaries. Slow perception is the refusal to let anyone else set your tempo. When a moment feels once in a lifetime, you breathe until it becomes today again. When a statement sounds like fate, you rephrase it until it sounds like a plan. Plain language is the antidote to trance. You translate poetry into terms. We're perfect for each other becomes, here's how we treat one. Another on a Wednesday afternoon. You do the, just get me becomes these are the ways we consistently show up. It will always feel like this becomes, this is what we do when it doesn't. Steady. Boundaries are less about doors slamming and more about hinges that don't squeak. Your no is quiet. Your yes is owned. Pressure does not make either change its shape. Seeing through seduction instantly is not a trick. It is a posture. You assume nothing, you confirm gently, you watch for pattern. A genuine person grows clearer the closer you stand. A performance grows brighter and then glitchy. The lover who is real becomes more specific when you ask hard questions. The lover who is acting becomes vague. The mentor who is safe celebrates your independent judgment. The mentor who is hungry for control flatters your dependence. The rebel who is free respects your rules as much as they break their own. The rebel who is reckless needs you to co-sign their chaos to prove you're brave. The caregiver who is whole lets you carry your share. The caregiver who is covertly controlling keeps you tired. These tells are not accusations. They are weather you have learned to read. You do not need storms to prove your skill. You simply stop leaving the house without checking the sky. Presence is how immunity lives in the body. Real presence is not mystical. It is measured. You feel your feet. You feel your breath. You give your attention on purpose, and you take it back on purpose when you are done. You let silence be silence. You let desire be desire without translating it into commitments you didn't promise. You do not rush to relieve other people's discomfort, because you no longer confuse relief with love. This makes you sound simple, sometimes even boring to people who crave spectacle. But presence is magnetic for the same reason mountain air is. People breathe deeper near someone who doesn't make weather for sport. Power in this awakened sense is the result of many small permissions you give yourself. You permit yourself to wait when your body begs you to chase. You permit yourself to ask, "What do you mean?" when a sentence sounds like a fog machine. You permit yourself to say, "I'll answer tomorrow," when urgency tries to barter with your fear of being left. You permit yourself to keep your standards visible, even when someone stunning walks into the room. These permissions stack. They become a posture that cannot be faked, because it is practiced in private. And because it is practiced, it appears effortless. That effortlessness is what manipulators read as untouchable. They cannot find the handles they are used to grabbing, not because you hide them, but because you hold them yourself. Emotional sovereignty is not a myth. It is a method. You learn the contours of your needs, so you can meet them without turning them into demands disguised as romance. You begin to feed yourself the exact nutrients that used to make you agree too quickly. You give yourself honest praise before anyone else can buy you with flattery. You give yourself structure, so a controlling presence stops feeling like safety. You give yourself wonder, so secrecy stops masquerading as depth. Sovereignty is not self-sufficiency. It is rightful authorship. You still invite care, you still ask for help, you still love boldly. You simply do not outsource your center to keep those things. Your inner weather report remains yours to write. Becoming a conscious observer is the last shift and the one that changes everything without making a sound. You learn to sit 1 inch behind your eyes. You watch the conversation and your reactions at the same time. You listen for content and for pattern. You notice the moment you start performing. You notice the moment your childhood reaches for the wheel. You notice the small lie you are tempted to tell to keep the moment warm. And instead of judging yourself, you smile with recognition. I see the move. The smile breaks the trance. The lie is retired before it leaves your mouth. The wheel remains where it belongs. In this observer's seat, you become the one thing every manipulator fears most. A person who notices. Tricks need darkness. You carry a lamp. You will not become invulnerable. You don't need to. You will still feel the rush of chemistry, The sweetness of praise, the sting of distance, the ache of uncertainty. These are signs that you are alive, not signs that you are failing. What will shift is what you do next. Instead of chasing the flood, you fill your day. Instead of fixing a silent room, you keep your dignity. Instead of earning back warmth, you ask directly or step away. Instead of narrating their behavior to save face, you speak one true sentence about yours. Your life becomes simple, not small simple. The drama that used to require music now ends in sentences. The cliffhangers close themselves because you no longer extend them for suspense. If you are tempted to test your awakening by proving you cannot be seduced, you will drift back into performance. You don't need to seek temptations to gauge your strength. Strength shows itself in ordinary rooms. How you answer a late-night message, how you decline a half-truth delivered with flowers, how you keep your promises to yourself on days when no one is looking. The untouchable mind is not loud. It carries quiet rules written on the inside of the ribs, and because those rules are your own, you follow them without resentment. That lack of resentment is another thing manipulators cannot stand. They cannot bait you if you have nothing to avenge. Before we close, let's make this very human. Think of one place in your life where you still abandon yourself by habit. Maybe you explain too much to avoid disappointing someone. Maybe you accept vagueness because clarity feels confrontational. Maybe you mistake adrenaline for a sign from the universe. Bring just one of these into the light of your next week. Give yourself one new permission tied to that habit. Permission to be brief, permission to be clear, permission to wait. The goal is not perfection. It is proof. You are proving to your own body that you belong to you. Each proof teaches your nervous system to relax where it once sprinted. When this chapter ends, the world will ask the same questions it did yesterday. The feeds will scroll, the faces will charm, the offers will glow, but you will hear a softer sound beneath them, your own presence returning like a tide that keeps its promise. Don't rush to use it. Let it stand and breathe. Look around your life with it and ask, where do I want to give my attention because it makes me more myself? Follow that answer. You will still love. You will still be moved, but your love will come with sight, and your movement will be chosen. That is the awakening of an untouchable mind, not a fortress against feeling, but a home where every feeling knocks and none of them get the deed. Chapter 10. The Forbidden Knowledge Unleashed. Some truths don't shatter chains, they make them invisible. The most dangerous knowledge is the kind that looks simple, and then quietly rearranges the way you move through every room. Once you see the strings, you don't need to cut them, you just stop dancing to their tune. This audiobook breaks taboos because it puts names to the quiet mechanics most people feel but cannot describe. There is an old superstition that says, if you stare too directly at influence, the magic dies. That superstition keeps you obedient. We have done the opposite. We have walked you into the engine room and let you listen to the rhythm of how attention is captured, how certainty is performed, how intimacy is accelerated, how fear is fed and hope is harvested. We have slowed the movie until the edits show, not to make you cynical, but to make you free. Society often hides this lens because life is easier to manage when people believe that good feelings prove good intentions and that pressure is passion by another name. We called the moves what they are so that your yes can be honest and your no can be kind. That is why this feels forbidden. Not because the knowledge is evil, but because it returns authority to where it has always belonged, your steady center. Understanding influence as a double-edged sword means accepting that the blade that once cut you can also defend you, and that the hand holding it determines the story. Influence is how a parent soothes a child in the night, how a teacher draws a shy voice into the open, how a friend slows your breath when grief is loud. The same tools, mirroring, pacing, framing, scarcity named or implied, can become either care or control depending on the motivation behind them and the freedom they leave in their wake. The test is simple and merciless. After the moment ends, are you more yourself or less? Did your choices multiply or narrow? Did you gain a clearer view of your life, or a brighter view of theirs that dims when they step away? It is not the poetry of the moment that decides. It is the math of your freedom. We are not teaching you to fear persuasion. We are teaching you to respect your agency enough to require that every influence you allow into your life leaves you with more oxygen than it found. With knowledge comes the responsibility of awakened minds, and this may be the quietest revolution of all. You do not get to hold these tools and then become the thing you once feared, bending realities to win small games that will cost you yourself. The temptation will appear, especially when you realize how easy it is to speed someone's heartbeat with a well-timed silence or a perfectly crafted compliment. You will hear the click in your head when a frame lands and a door opens that wasn't there a moment ago. You could walk through and take what you want. The ethical edge is choosing not to, when the price is someone else's clarity. There is a simple pledge that keeps the blade clean. Invite, never corner. Clarify, never compress. Reveal, never obscure. Lead, never leash. If persuasion is a light, hold it low so the ground is visible, not high so the shadows look longer and the path looks narrower than it is. Awakened minds also carry a second responsibility that is less glamorous and more demanding. Consistency. Anyone can be brilliant in a crisis. The real work is being clear in the quiet. It is easy to set boundaries when betrayed, harder to set them when adored. It is easy to leave what harms you when the harm is loud, harder to leave when the harm is soft and comes wrapped in gifts. It is easy to be ethical when the world is watching, harder when the only witness is the part of you that still wants to be impressive. The discipline is simple. Practice small truth where no applause is given. Speak plainly when exaggeration would sway the room faster. Ask for time when flattery tries to buy your consent at a discount. Keep your promises to yourself, so you don't need other people's admiration to feel solid. Your steadiness is not a performance. It is your power walking around in ordinary shoes. You might worry that seeing the game will steal something beautiful from life. It won't. You will still be moved by music and faces and words that were put into the world with love. The difference is that the beauty will not require you to disappear. You will step into a conversation that once would have swept you away and feel your feet under you. You will taste praise and enjoy it without reorganizing your personality to secure the next serving. You will notice urgency and recognize it as a tool, not a prophecy. You will let silence sit without turning it into a trial. You will feel the pull, and this is the miracle. Choose. There is no loss in that. There is gain. Moments become honest again because they are no longer obligated to buy your belonging. This knowledge will also soften you in surprising ways. When you can see how people reach for control, you can also see how often it is simply fear wearing clever clothes. The lover who rushes is afraid the magic will fade if you see them in daylight. The mentor who flatters is afraid they are only valuable if you need their certainty. The rebel who demands your allegiance is afraid their freedom is empty if no one follows. This doesn't excuse harm. It explains it. Explanation gives you options beyond retaliation. You can refuse with grace. You can leave without turning goodbye into a spectacle. You can say, I know what you are doing and I do not consent, not to humiliate, but to set a boundary that protects both of you from a smaller story. That too is a form of influence, the kind that raises the temperature of honesty in the room and lets everyone feel their own skin again. Once you see the game, you can never be played again, is not a boast. It is a practice. It does not mean you will never feel the hook. You will. It means you will feel the hook and you will not bite. You will see the menu and ask for the kitchen. You will hear the music and enjoy it without letting it choreograph your steps. Immunity is not the absence of pull. It is ownership of direction. The life that grows from this ownership is not sterile or distant. It is spacious. It has room for laughter that doesn't need to be proof of anything, for sorrow that doesn't require performance to be held, for desire that is honest enough to be patient. The drama drains because the stage has fewer trapdoors. The story becomes interesting in a new way, the way a clear day is. Interesting when you once lived under storms you thought were weather but were actually machines. If there is one thing I want you to carry from this chapter, it is the quiet authority to choose your pace. Pacing is the original power. Steal it back and most tactics collapse. Say, "I'll answer tomorrow," and watch how the script changes. Say, "Can you be specific?" and watch how the fog lifts or thickens. Say, "I'm not trading clarity for speed," and watch how the room divides itself into those who can love you and those who only know how to leverage you. Pace is not stalling. Pace is respect. Respect for your future, for your nervous system, for the kind of love and work that survive beyond the first rush. As we close this audiobook, don't turn the pages into a shield you must carry everywhere. Let them be a compass you can put in your pocket and forget until you need it. You will forget sometimes. You will give someone the benefit of the doubt longer than the facts deserve. You will call urgency destiny and hurry into a room that would have waited for you. When that happens, you have not failed. You have found another place to practice. Smile at the part of you that still wants the shortcut. Then honor the part that learned the map. You can walk out the same door you ran through. Before you go, look around your life as it is right now. Identify one place where you can raise the light by a single degree. One conversation you can slow. One boundary you can name without drama. One decision you can take back from the echo of flattery or the ache of distance. Do it not to prove anything to anyone, but to quietly remind your own mind that it is in fact yours. You do not owe access to those who trade in confusion. You do not owe speed to those who cannot sit with truth. You do not owe your self-respect to anyone's idea of romance. This is the forbidden knowledge, unleashed and gentle. Influence is real. Seduction is powerful. Awareness is stronger. Use what you know to build rooms where people can keep their agency while keeping you. Use it to become the person you would trust if you were at your most vulnerable. Use it to make your love braver and your work cleaner. And when the old music starts, the kind that once made you move before you thought, listen for the new rhythm underneath. It is slower. It is steadier. It is yours. Once you hear it, you will never be played again, not because no one will try, but because the conductor has finally come home. If any of these tactics felt painfully familiar, please know that you are not alone. So many people have walked this path, and sharing our stories is one of the best ways to take back the narrative. Let us know in the comments which of these tactics you've seen up close. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to see the truth. And if you want to keep pulling back the curtain on the psychology of power and manipulation, make sure you like this video and subscribe. We're dedicated to decoding the tactics that shape our lives, so you can navigate the world with clarity and confidence.